Well, it's just been a great year for games, hasn't it? There's been so many games that have come out that are just they're just amazing. They're going to withstand the test of time, and 20 years from now we're going to look back and say, "Wow, those were some games. Those were some games." And it's all because of one special group. One special group of people. One very special group of people. Very well known in the gaming universe now. They're very well known. You'll, you'll Tales of Kenzera Zhao developer lays off entire team and puts entire games division on hiatus after previously claiming game sales were fine. And there we have it. The culprit every single time. You ever notice that the common thing that all these games have is Sweet Baby Inc? Funny how every single game that's worked with Sweet Baby Inc has failed in one way or another. Maybe stop working with them. Stop consulting with them. They're not in to make good games. They're not in it to make good characters. They're in it to push diversity, equity, inclusion, which has shown time and time and time and time again, all throughout this just this one year, that that's not what people want. That diversity, equity, and inclusion don't make a good game. But sure, keep working with these people. Surgeon Studios, a developer of Tales of Kenzera Zhao, who worked with Sweet Baby Inc., announced it is putting its entire games division on hiatus. In a post on X, Surgeon Studios shared, "We've decided to put the work of the Surgeon Games division on hiatus while we secure funding for our next project. In the meantime, we've unfortunately had to put our team on notice of redundancy. Everyone at Surgeon worked incredibly hard to create Tales of Kenzera Zhao, and a game that truly comes from the heart. Their passion, creativity, dedication are nothing short of extraordinary. There are still a couple of exciting updates coming down the pipeline for Zhao. Our team has created a prototype for a bold new project. It's darker, edgier, and more visceral than our first game, but it retains all Zhao's high-octane combat and cultural depth. And we're looking for a partner. Help us bring our vision to life. Just don't just no. Sometimes it's best to just go it alone, because you hire consultants and they end up being Sweet Baby Inc. or one of those other companies that are like them, and then you end up having your game ruined. The announcement comes over 3 months after Surgeon Studios announced it was laying off over a dozen people. The company noted at the time, "Unfortunately, Surgeon has joined the growing number of game studios impacted by layoffs this year. I can't imagine why." This year, with just a dozen people affected, it's a difficult time in the games industry, but we remain incredibly proud of our entire team's work on Zhao and the praise it has received from critics and players alike. The company concluded, "Our focus is now supporting those affected, continuing our support on Zhao, and looking to the future with our next creative projects." It also comes less than 6 months after Surgeon Studio founder and CEO Abu Bakr Salim claimed that the game sales were fine, despite announcing that he was discontinuing the game.
So I don't want to address this, but we're here now. Look, since the beginning of my career, there's always been someone who's made me feel like I didn't deserve the opportunity I got. From Assassin's Creed to Raised by Wolves, I've had to ignore people saying that it wasn't the work that got me the opportunities. No, it was simply because I'm black. And look, I turned the other cheek and just kept doing my thing. Even when people were saying, oh, the only reason why he's been cast as father in Raised by Wolves is because the character's a service model. And some of these comments, a few of them you can just brush until, me, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. So starting today on Switch, shout out to Nintendo for acting fast on this. I'm lowering that bar of entry further by dropping the price of ZOW to less than $15. Now, I genuinely believe in the power that games have to bring us close together. And I believe that, this is just one way that I can show you how serious I am about this. Look, games are for everyone. Like, diverse games, then they're not about taking something away from you. They're about adding something in. Because there's room for all of us.
When these people start realizing that diversity, equity, and inclusion aren't that important, and that you can relate to any character as long as they're well written, the sooner they do that, the better. The sooner they do that, the better. Because what has diversity, equity, and inclusion proven this year? Oh, we're going to have all these diverse characters that you can relate to. But then the game fails. Some games so bad they get pulled off the stores. Unknown 9 just comes out. Diverse game. Only 169 peak playing the game. If you write a good character, anyone can see themselves in that character. I've talked about anthropomorphic cats, where, in one shot, you play as a cat, essentially, but you relate to the character. Do you look like a cat? No. But do you relate to the character and what they're going through, the hardships they're going through, the choices you have to make? Yes, you do. You don't have to see yourself in a game to relate to the character. And the more these people focus on that, the worse these games are going to suffer. The worse these games are going to be. Because you're so focused with, oh, people need to see themselves. People need to see... No, they don't. No, they don't. But let's go ahead and see the trailer real fast. All right, so we're going to go to the most trusted name in gaming, IGN. This is their review.
I am a shaman, my father's son, wielding his masks, knowing his ways. I can do this, Kalunga. I know I can.
In an ocean of new action platformers, it's easy to overlook Tales of Kenzera, ZOW, but casting it away without a second thought would be a mistake. This is a short, sweet, side-scrolling action game inspired by the many, many children of Metroid and Castlevania. It's full of crunchy combat and springy platforming, all of which is fun, if not groundbreaking, in a genre where others seem to raise the bar on a regular basis. But most importantly, it's the touching love letter from a grieving son to their deceased father, told in clever and moving allegories about sending restless spirits to the afterlife that helps it stand out in the pack.
A sickness plagued him. You have taken his soul, and I am here to reclaim it back.
The biggest first impression Tales of Kenzera makes is how great it looks. With a bold color palette and dynamic environments like lush jungles and rolling hills, finding a screenshot of this game that looks anything less than beautiful would take an act from a spiteful god. Though some of the human characters have clunky or stilted animations, the monsters you'll fight move with a supernatural gait that is fitting for restless spirits, but also useful for clearly identifying when to attack and when to dodge. Tales of Kenzera's African inspirations don't stop at its looks. Its story of a shaman named ZOW that must usher restless spirits into the afterlife, itself being told as a story within a story about the loss of a loved one, is rich with parables about surviving through grief. This is a common refrain in much of the ancestor-worshipping mythology of Central and East African people, where death, though painful, can be a rite of passage. Besides being a solid representation of a culture that goes underrepresented in fiction outside of royal cats fighting over space rocks, is also an extremely personal tale about a son losing his dad, inspired by director Abu Bakr Salim's own relationship with his late father. The simple, delicate, and poignant ways that Tales of Kenzera speaks to loss is one that will stay with me for a long time after any specific platforming sections or enemies fade from my memory.
I think he wanted to make sure he had a good story to tell his son.
This is partially because of how well each of the three big sections entwine the actual game mechanics with those larger themes. For instance, the key ability gained during a section that involves climbing a volcanically active mountain to chase the great spirit of humanity is one that lets your indomitable human will run through walls like a charging bull. But it's also effective thanks to how well written and acted the sparse cast of characters is, especially Zhao himself and Kalunga, the god of death who is more wise uncle than Grim Reaper.
All I see before me is a boy. A desperate boy with a desperate plea.
On the other hand, the action of this roughly 6-hour adventure through the exotic land of Kenzera meets modern Metroidvania standards, but rarely exceeds them. Each zone is jam-packed with platforming sequences that don't really test your reflexes or abilities, with the exception of some optional sections that limit checkpoints and push the pace for some sort of reward. I enjoyed all of the dashing, diving, and wall jumping in Tales of Kenzera, but there are very few standout moments, let alone when compared to the impressive areas of contemporaries like Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. There's a distinct lack of collectible chasing in Tales of Kenzera too. That might bum out folks who enjoy the treasure hunting aspect of Metroidvanias, but I quite enjoyed the trade-off of having to do much less backtracking through winding paths I've already explored. And some findables do exist, like echoes, which are voice notes for unexplored lore bits. I just didn't feel much incentive to stick around any particular place simply to find them. Approachability seems to be the main focus here, and I think Tales of Kenzera succeeds in that regard. Combat is simple but satisfyingly quick and impactful. Zhao's Shaman Mask grant him powers of the moon and the sun, which have ranged and melee focuses respectively. You can switch back and forth between them instantly to adapt to whatever the encounter calls for, usually breaking color-coded shields to open monsters up for big damage. As a fan of Housemarque's Outland from 2014, I was happy to see this mechanic return in an evolved and more refined form. The moon and the sun have other unique abilities as well, be it shooting hovering enemies or sending airborne baddies crashing back down to the ground. Enemy variety is rather small, but the monsters are all pretty different from one another, and they are introduced at a gradual pace. That includes things like this tanky boy that's near invulnerable head-on, or these bug-like things that drain life from all creatures in the area, friend or foe. In the latter half of the campaign, the synergies between these enemies add an extra challenge that is by no means controller breaking, but are still clever enough to force tactical thinking and prioritization. Zhao doesn't have many skills to choose from, and the skill tree itself is limited, but after the first tier of upgrades, I didn't feel like I was truly missing out on much. You get all of his vital skills through progressing the story, such as Kabili, which allows you to hover across gaps, or the Zawadi grappling hook. And a few of them even have some value both in and out of fights. For example, the same Cerulean Spear that can freeze waterfalls into walls to kick off of can also freeze enemies and open them up to free damage. That said, freezing enemies and then nailing them with Zhao's big spirit attacks really trivialize some encounters towards the endgame. This includes some of the bosses, who are high in spectacle but low in difficulty, with fights that end up being pretty similar to one another. I wish there were more of the Spirit Journey Trials, which are sets of enemy gauntlets that were consistently the most demanding fights available, forcing me to mix all of my skills and know how to survive. The worst thing I can say about Tales of Kenzera Zhao is that its platforming and level designs are fun, clearly inspired by some of the best Metroidvanias around, but don't really produce any moments that rival those inspirations. Its combat, though also simple and familiar, manages to sing thanks to small but meaningfully different offerings of skills and enemies. And that action is ultimately just a satisfying break from the main attraction, a truly moving tale about how to go on in this world when your loved ones have passed on to the next.
Take your time, Zuberi.
For more side-scrolling action, check out our reviews of Pepper Grinder,
Oh, IGN, you never fail to disappoint. You never fail to disappoint. Such high hopes. Thought you were going to do something different. Nope, you stuck with that 7. You landed that 7. Also, here's the charts. So, all-time peak 287. 5. 5. False. Let's see. The game isn't selling well. Also false. I've addressed this on AMA Reddit. The numbers some are circulating are a fraction of our actual playership, and they're being shared in bad faith by people who are wanting to provide proof. I mean, this is pretty definitive. You know, these don't factor in anything else apart from the people playing. So apparently it's wasn't as good selling, as better selling as they thought. The game clearly wasn't doing well. Obviously, the game sales were not fine, or the company would not have had to lay off entire staff or put its entire game division on hiatus. Yeah, see, that's what happens when you have games that don't do well, and when you have someone like Ubisoft or a company like that, it's just one thing after another after another after another. You find that. You're laying off 700 people. But, yeah. Yeah. It's Sweet Baby Inc. This is what happens when you have Sweet Baby Inc. work on crap. This poor performance was not unsurprising, given that Surgeon Studios hired Sweet Baby Inc. to work on the game, and was subsequently added to Sweet Baby Inc. Detected Steam Curator that effectively serves as a boycott for lists for gamers who do not want to play games worked on by Sweet Baby Inc. Given the company's stated goals are to burn the video game industry to the ground and insert woke ideology along the way. The game was added to the curator list after Sweet Baby Inc. announced it in January that it had worked on in the game. The company wrote, "Our friends at Surgeon Studios dropped the trailer for their upcoming action-adventure platformer, Tales of Panzera, Zao. We had the utmost pleasure of working with Abu Bakar Salim and the Surgeon team and on this poignant story, which have been heavily inspired and influenced by Bantu mythology. We know you're gonna love it as much as we do." Well, apparently. Furthermore, Salim was a partner with the co-founders of Sweet Baby Inc., David Bedard and Kim Belair, alongside Sweet Baby Inc. employee and Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League writer Amy Leigh Shaw, and the company named Bebe Sucre Ltd. Or Sweet Baby Ltd. Salim resigned from his role as director of the company on March 12, 2024, after being appointed on April 27, 2023. Not surprised. Not surprised. And this is the fate of anyone that works for Sweet Baby Inc. Sweet Baby Inc. at this point is a death kiss. It is a kiss of death. Or not even a kiss of death. It just rots everything it touches. And people are well aware of this game. And that's why the whole thing was made for, for people who don't want to play Sweet Baby Inc. games, because they're all bad. They're bad. Even if they're not terrible, you don't want to pay money for a subpar game. Now, you want that to blow you away. You know, by the end, you want your screen to be covered in jizz because of how freaking amazing the game was. It just makes you blow your load right then and there. But then you buy the game and it's like, you know, and that's what all Sweet Baby Inc. is. It's either or, yeah, it's bad. Sweet Baby Inc. is incapable of creating exceptional games. They're just incapable of it. Anything they touch turns to crap. So having to lay off an entire team, not surprised. Maybe companies need to stop working with this group and just trust in your own skills and storytelling abilities, and because Sweet Baby Inc. is not gonna, they're not doing you any favors. They're not doing you any favors. So, if you truly believe that you need forced diversity, equity, and inclusion in games, you're doomed to fail every single time. Every single time. But yeah, entire team laid off and games division on hiatus. But that's gonna do it for me. Oh, and also IGN, always with that 7, always with the 7. But yeah, that's gonna do it for me. You guys know the drill. I'll see you guys later. Bye, guys.